somebody of a different race or committing an action against them, discriminating against them. And these are all some very different things. As I told you before, I'm a professor at Stockton, and so this is something that I teach in all of my classes. Every single one starts off with learning some of the differences between racism, prejudice, and discrimination, right? Can anybody tell me what prejudice is? Anyone at all? Go ahead, yes.
So it's just like having, like you hear things about certain people and you form this this idea that all people are like that
Right,
certain group of people.
So this is the formation of ideas that may be biased, that may be born out of stereotypes, but these belief systems that exist in your mind. You may or may not act on it, okay? So this is what prejudice is. What about discrimination? Can anybody talk about what that is? Yes.
Discrimination is when another race or another group of people are perceived as lesser or given different opportunities than another group of people or race.
Right, so being given different opportunities is the key part there. And so discrimination actually involves action, right? So this is when I am actively going to treat somebody differently because of their race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, them being a member of any sort of group that I don't identify with. And so discrimination may or may not be coupled with prejudice. You might not actually believe that that person is less than, but you might be following a pattern that you've seen elsewhere, or it might benefit you monetarily to discriminate against that person. And so you're going to do that and commit that action. And these are two different things. So you may believe that people are less than, but not act on it, and you may act on it without believing that. Racism kind of comes when those two come together, and also has a very deeper and layered meaning. And a lot of times when we talk about racism, we're thinking about either prejudice or discrimination and paint it with a broad stroke. But racism, institutional racism, and systemic racism is very different. This is when a group of people who are in power are using that power to directly affect the lives of marginalized communities, right? And so when we're talking about things like racism, like sexism, like ableism, like homophobia, these are things that can only be committed by groups in power, because it's not just a simple action, a simple I'm going to call you a name, or I'm going to stop you from doing something. This is something that is built into the very fabric of our country. And this is a reason why a lot of people today are calling for movements like defunding or abolishing the police system, because these are things that are not just one or two bad apples. These are things that are directly built into these institutions that we have all grown up in. These are things that are that we grow up with and that we learn and normalize without ever being aware of it. A black psychologist named Beverly Tatum once described ideas of anti-blackness as a smog. And she's the author of Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria and Other Conversations About Race, which is a great book looking at race in school-aged children. And she describes anti-blackness as being a smog. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not visible, but all of us are breathing it in and day out, and are being affected by it whether or not we realize it. And so this is something that becomes important to, first of all, realize, and then secondly, examine yourself. Say, where am I, consciously or unconsciously, supporting these ideas of anti-blackness? What can I start doing to eliminate those in my thinking, in my actions, and in my interactions with others? And so that's something that I would challenge all of you today. When we come into these places, all of us are in a place of privilege, different types and different levels of privileges that each of us have. But just, being in the U.S., being in a country where we are able to speak freely to a certain extent, is a privilege. Most of us come from similar economic backgrounds and have certain privileges, and so it's important for us to use those privileges, whatever privileges that we may have, in order to support agency for other people. And this doesn't mean speaking for them. This doesn't mean speaking about them. This means lifting up their voices and allowing them to be heard. And so as you guys start this day of protest, And I know you have lots of great activities planned, some performances and dances and a rally and march and everything like that. I just urge you to remember the importance of this movement and of attending events like this. Please share this widely. Make sure that you're documenting everything that's happened today. Make sure that you're sharing it with other folks who should be here with you today. And just keep in mind the reason why we continue to fight and the reasons why this is important. And so as we think about some of the activists of the past and we look towards the future, we just need to constantly remember that we are the future and that it is up to us to change the world. Thank you.
Yes.